winners and the program that he runs.
Great, thank you very much for allowing me to present the award winners this year. This is Sam Toledo. He was one of our big winners from Logan High School this year. The purpose of the contest is to teach teens about local air pollution, its causes, how to preserve air quality, such as not idling, using an app rather than going through the drive-through when you come into your favorite restaurant, trip chaining, taking the bus, etc. And also we teach them marketing communication strategies to create public service announcements in this competition. This was our 8th year. We started in 2015 at Logan High. We're now at 9 high schools. 2 of them are in southern Idaho. We had 800 teams this year participate. We had 60 finalists from across those 9 high schools. We had 35 judges, including Jeannie Simmons, was one of our judges this year. We had 18 state winners and 2 honorable mentions. We had over $6,000 in cash prizes and gift cards, all donated by local businesses in Cache Valley and throughout the state. So we're very appreciative of the support. Here are our 4 top winners. This black and white image of this young lady, that's actually a self-portrait. She won $300, was our top award this year. She is from Grand County High School in Moab. The other one, Don't Idle, the license plate parody there was from a teen at Carbon High School in Price. And then Sam Toledo's award-winning public service announcement is this yellow one. And this other one here, which is a parody on Green Day record album. So it's hilarious when you look at the details of it. That was from a young lady from Ridgeline High School. One of the things that we like to do is to teach the students how to do parody as a way to execute marketing messages. And so these were some of the top awards where we were making fun of Taylor Swift and her latest Lavender Haze, which I think is hilarious. We also have I can't even think of all of Harry Potter and Wall-E, and also a parody of Utah tourist posters, which I think was funny. We also have a lot of executions that relate to teen pop culture. This one here, this purple one, was from Logan High School. I love the idea of incorporating social norms through a meme. This is actually the image of the young lady who turned this in, and I think it's hilarious. This one here, this I Wish I Knew, is actually a parody on Steve Lacy's Bad Habits song. And this other one here I think is really interesting. One of the big challenges we have is people will text in their car while letting it idle. And so this particular public service announcement highlights this issue of people just sitting in their cars, texting, playing on their cell phone, and not realizing that they're burning gas and polluting the air. So what we have done is we've conducted 4 studies on the contest over the last 8 years. We find that most students tell us that the contest is the only form of education they get about Utah's air pollution. The parents we've interviewed tell us they believe that it's maybe politically difficult to talk about pollution in the classroom. And so this is an issue that we're looking at. What we find is that the contest actually does seem to spark conversations. They're just a challenge of coming up with a marketing piece. Encourages contestants to talk to their parents, talk to families and friends, and that is a way for them to get ideas for their public service announcements, and that leads to conversations about air pollution. Thus, we find that the contest does extend beyond the classroom. We find that social influence is really an important factor in what seems to be impacting the teens and their parents. The teens pester their parents. We call this the inconvenient youth effect, where the teens will pester their parents on these issues. And we also find that parents are generally welcoming of this pestering, so it's not like a nuisance or anything. And some of the interviews that we've done with parents say that they've actually taken on the role of becoming clean air advocates themselves. So we find that the contest instills commitment to clean air actions, and there are 4 things that the literature says that are important for encouraging commitment, and that is that it has to be active. So, creating a public service announcement is a very active form of understanding air pollution. It's got to be public. All of these are displayed in public, so that becomes important. It's effortful. These are difficult to do. Many students tell us that to come up with a brilliant idea that's going to win them several $100s is difficult. And it's got to be voluntary or freely chosen. So we allow the students to come up with any idea that they want. Some of them are edgy and some of them are controversial, but we believe that it's effective for the students to be able to kind of make their own choices and decisions on how they want to execute these public service announcements. And in general, we find that the contest seems to spark the joy of learning and self-discovery that you really can't replicate in the classroom. So one of the recommendations that I would like to present to the Logan City Council is, we should employ social influence and commitment making into our anti-idling efforts in the city. And what I believe is we should probably initiate an education outreach in the elementary schools, engage the youth in some kind of active, public, and effortful kind of anti-idling activities. It could be coloring, maybe another contest of some sorts. Prepare take-home materials for the parents, and instruct the young people to just say, hey, kids, tell your parents about this. And we believe that if we were to engage the elementary schools, that we would get the kids to engage parents on cleaner actions. This is also one of the winners from this year, and the reason why I chose it for the last one to share with you is that it's based on, it's a parody of the Smokey Bear campaign. And what's interesting about Smokey Bear was the campaign started back in the 40s, and it was geared toward kids, teaching them how to put out campfires. And the purpose of that was so that the kids would teach their parents about fire safety in the forests. And so this young teen from Logan High School used Smokey Bear as a parody, but I think it's instructive in that the reason why that campaign was so effective is because it engaged young people to engage their parents. And that's my presentation, and will you join? Oh, yes,
I have a
question.
question though. So you put elementary schools, are you meaning K through 8, like also the junior high?
Well, we hit the 9 through 12, so I think that if we were to engage all the elementary schools on air pollution, we would have a little army of kids that would be pestering their parents about not idling and thinking about, and that could be a very effective way to get people to comply with our ordinance.
So do you see opportunities for funding for something like a coloring campaign
at this
that
point,
age, or?
That would be kind of the next step to explore funding. I am very busy with the high schools, so it would have to be another group of people, but I would be more than happy to share my expertise of what we've learned in the high schools, and I believe that it could be replicated into the elementary schools and probably be even more effective because the kids in elementary schools are going to be that much more engaged with the issue, depending on what the activities are in those programs.
Okay, maybe the Medical Society or the Medical Society Alliance would be a good partner in that.
Sure. Now will you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Do you know anybody in that society?
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Professor Stauffer.
Thank you, Ed.
Thank you.
I'm always happy to be a judge. I've been incredibly impressed by the changes over time in the quality and thoughtfulness of the participants. I think they are become, every year it's like, wow, these are really good. And they're really thinking through this, and they're really, trying to appeal to both their age group and an adult age group. And that's really nice.
Yes.
Did they get to review the submissions over the last 5 or 6 years?
Yes, we have a website, cleanaircontest.usu.edu, where you can see our sponsors and the last 8 years of winners that are posted.
That's great.
So you started with how many?
We started with 75 at Logan High School in 2015. We had the Spanish Club, And we had environmental science classes. Andrew Sanadeni, and he's been with me since 2015, and so he's been for all the last 8 years. And what's remarkable about Logan High School is that we're not engaging art students. There are other schools that are engaging art students. His students are environmental science, but they come up with some brilliant and outstanding art pieces themselves. And so I think it's a testament to what the kids can do. Even if you're not in an art class, they have the skills, they have the digital art skills and physical painting and drawing skills that they can do these. And so I'm just very pleased that Logan High continued, and also the support of Logan City for the contest over the years.
Thank you.
Good, thank you.
Thanks, Ed.
Next on our agenda is the acceptance of minutes and the approval of our agenda for tonight. Everybody's quiet today.
I move for acceptance of the minutes and approval of the agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say nay. We got our agenda approved then for tonight. Just as a reminder that our meetings are the first and the third Tuesdays of every month at 5:30, and our next meeting will be on March 21st. Now is the time for anyone in the public who wishes to address the mayor or the council with items that are not on the agenda for tonight. So if you'd like to make any comment on those types of items, please come up to the mic and state your name and your place of residence.
I'm going to trip myself up.
I think someone's beating you to the...
Yeah.
I just wanted to remind the council, I'm sure the mayor already knows, the Wilson neighborhood is having the neighborhood meeting at the Wilson Elementary School from 5:30 to 7 p.m. tomorrow. And we'd love for anybody to come and see what we're doing and what we're learning to do in our neighborhood. So just thought that would be informative.
Thank you.
And that'll be at the school.
I'm Jeff Muller from the Ellis District of Logan. I'd like to start out with something that somebody said, not a poem, but just a saying. A new world must be born, a world that would justify the sacrifices offered by humanity. This new world must be a world in which there shall be no exploitation of the weak by the strong, of the good by the evil, where there will be no humiliation of the poor, by the violence of the rich, where the products of intellect, science, and art will serve society for the betterment and beautification of life, and not individuals for achieving wealth. That was Nikola Tesla. He was born in 1856 to 1943. What a brilliant inventor. There's a lot I wanted to say, but I'm still getting used to talking in public. But I see, when I came across this piece of paper, I've been doing a lot of investigation into what's going on with a lot of land grabbing going on in Logan and in Cache Valley and stuff by investment groups, hedge funds, things like that. And I've noticed a trend in this. And this trend is literally the reason why housing prices are going up across the state and nationwide. We've got a bunch of Wall Street people that have come into Logan. They've gone to USU. Most of them have gone into USU for business, for poli-sci, for accounting and things like that. And I'm glad that they're going to USU and using it. It's a great school. But they've gotten out of school and they have literally started these groups, these LLCs that are going around, and they're just buying up land like trailer parks, RV parks, things like that, increasing the rent. And the truth is, there's no money to be made in these properties. These properties, I believe, are going to be flipped to an investment development group, just so that they can increase their profits on something else like more rentals. In Logan City, we have like a 36% homeowner occupancy. I brought this up before. The national average is a 64%. The Utah average, I believe, is even more higher than that. But here in Logan, it's well below. And it's because of these rentals. A strong economy is based off of people's equity into homes. And these rentals do not earn anybody any equity except for these LLCs and their their corporations. So I think we need to start figuring out a way as a municipality, because municipalities have the power to be able to protect the people from this type of, I consider it a hostile takeover, because we have billionaires and millionaires doing this. And then we have the residents in Logan, which I don't know of any resident in Logan now that is a billionaire. I only know one that he's in North Logan. And I think we need to, I'm frustrated on this, what's going on here. Because I've watched my friends' rents go up. I've watched, living in RV parks, and they're just simply trying to survive. I've had homeless people stake out in my backyard, offered them electricity. They've been told it's illegal to stay there. They've had to move since to go to the warming shelter. And the people in this city, those that are less fortunate, I think are being totally taken advantage of. And this is not what the Logan I remember. And I've been here since 1976, in and out of this valley. I've got a unique view of being able to go in, come back, and see how many things have changed. It hasn't been this slow, just kind of just watching things blending together. I've been able to leave, come back, and see change. Leave, come back, see change. And hardly any of it has been in the best interest of Logan City and its residents. So I've got some ideas. If there's anybody that would like to take me up on some of these ideas, I'd be more than happy to share them. So thank you for your time.
Thanks, Josh.
Thank you for sharing your concerns and the invitation. Next on our agenda, Mayor and staff reports.
Thank you. Item 6A, we have a report from CAPSA, Miranda Garrett, on Sexual Assault Awareness Month. We appreciate what CAPSA does in our community to fight this problem.
Thank you. Miranda is actually our awesome intern. My name is Maddie, and I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator at CAPSA. I just have a quick message to read from CAPSA about Sexual Assault Awareness Month, which is April. This year we are focused on hope. We know that hope begins when we start by believing. Hope begins when survivors feel supported by their community. Hope happens when we connect survivors to CAPSA and our supporting agencies. CAPSA has several programs and services that work collaboratively to support survivors. This month we want to highlight our Outreach Casework program. We have 6 outreach caseworkers and 4 outreach casework interns. Our caseworkers are often the first to have these hard and personal conversations with survivors of sexual assault and rape. During these conversations, our caseworkers go through a pamphlet with survivors to help them understand their feelings, their reactions, and their choices of resources, and to help normalize all of it. We want to ensure that we help give power back to survivors. On average, in 2022, there were 3 CODARs per month, which are forensic medical exams for sexual assault and rape cases. But this range can fluctuate widely. Some months we may have 5 or 6, and some months we may have 0. In 2022, CAPSA responded to 39 Code R exams at the Cache Valley Hospital. And in 2022, 52% of CAPSA clients disclosed sexual assault, either as a primary or secondary survivor. And also in 2022, CAPSA assisted a total of 631 sexual assault clients. In order to best support survivors, CAPSA has developed incredible relationships with law enforcement, investigators, and the hospital. CAPSA's caseworkers know these systems and processes and can prepare individuals and empower them to make decisions to help them. I want to share a recent success story that highlights the value of these collaborations and CAPSA's efforts to support survivors of sexual assault. One of our caseworkers recently assisted a veteran who was making a report of sexual assault that occurred while she was in the military. The military flew in investigators to meet with the client. The client requested her caseworker join her for the interview. The investigators were able to use the police department as a space to conduct the interview. After the interview, the investigators asked the caseworker to stay back for a minute and express their gratitude to the caseworker for being present. They told the caseworker that the work we do is life-changing. This collaboration, the collaboration we share with your community, is what it takes to give hope to survivors. Thank you. I also have, I have pins and a poster. Do you have a place you'd like me to leave them other than right here?
Yeah, Teresa can take
Great.
this. Great.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you very much for coming. The next item on the agenda is we will have a report on our enforcement statistics from Erin Smith, our Neighborhood Improvement Manager. I know that's an issue that's concerned council members over the years. We've tried to be more proactive in terms of enforcing on some of these items that really affect the quality of life of our citizens. So we appreciate Erin. Again, they've done some new reporting that you'll see in that monthly community development report. And again, he's here to highlight that. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council, for giving me an opportunity to come and report on what we do in code enforcement. So again, I'm Erin Smith, Neighborhood Improvement Manager. You haven't seen my smiling face around here as much lately since I moved from planning into this neighborhood improvement role. But I'm happy to be back and to discuss this. As the Mayor mentioned, we revamped our reporting, so hopefully you found these new reports to be intriguing and something that kind of raises questions about what it is we do and how we can improve it and sort of see what it is that our inspectors get up to out there. So just a reminder of what kind of we do in code enforcement. So we're primarily responsible for nuisance enforcement, zoning enforcement, sort of those things you'd see in the land development code and the municipal code. We handle a lot of snow, weeds, front yard parking over occupancy, all sorts of fun stuff, signs and banners. And then we initiate our civil enforcement cases. So this is, we're not the criminal side, we're the civil enforcement side. So we work through request notices. We do have an administrative citation we use, and then it can even go up to notices of violation, which have more fines that are associated with them. And then we have a fee collection process. We initiate legal proceedings through small claims and liens against property. And currently we're staffed with 2 code compliance inspectors, 1 admin secretary, and myself, and I've got nice portraits so you can see who we are. So Deb Geller, she's our admin assistant. If you call neighborhood improvement or code enforcement, that's who you usually get on the phone. Then Maria Tenna is our one of our code compliance inspectors. She's been with us the longest. She's our veteran on our little crew here. And then Brooke Talbot, also a code compliance inspector. So they're the ones out in the field who do the day-to-day inspections of properties, kind of see what's going on out there. So 2022 was our largest case total in code enforcement history. We had 756 cases started. We also handed out 507 courtesy notices, and I'll get into those a little bit more. Those are notices that don't necessarily create a case, that are more informal, that we can drop on a front door or quickly send in the mail. So our numbers are up overall for all categories that we kind of track: total cases, total violations, total courtesy notices. So we're very active. One of the causes of this is we did increase our staffing. Just a little prior to this, I think we first went to 2 inspectors around 2018, and then things kind of slowed during COVID. We went back down to 1, and then we brought back a 7th inspector in 2020. So things have been ramping up as we've gained experience and are kind of at full strength right now.
More than full strength. You're like bursting at the seams.
There it is in graph form, just in case it's easier to visualize the changes in the use of courtesy notices, total cases, everything's sort of peaking now. And as I mentioned, we've brought on additional staff in the last few years, and one of the reasons for that was to take a more proactive approach to some of the nuisance complaints, such as weeds, snow, property maintenance. So of the 756 cases that we created, 371 were actually started by our inspectors out in the field, identifying a violation and starting a case. You can also see that we have a lot of internal complaints that come in. That's from mostly within community development, business licensing forwards us a lot of issues. But we also receive public complaints. So we had 195 public complaints. Those come in through a phone call, somebody at the front desk, or we have a web portal that they can send it in, or an email.
Do our complaints count as internal or public?
The council's complaints count as internal. We include those in the internal complaint category.
Just wanted to know.
Yep, that's where they land. That's where they land.
See, and that's 30%.
Well, it's helpful, you know, I mean, as I drive around town, I keep a little note card, and if there's a problem I see, I send it on to see if they're already enforcing, because, you know, it's hard for the two inspectors to be everywhere, but.
I do the same.
Yeah, because again, I mean, a neighbor may not be willing to complain, but it may be an issue that's really affecting them, and so.
True, and in conversations with residents, that's often what they're just like, I didn't want to call, but I got to a point where I just needed to, and we handle those. Tom?
Yeah. Seeing the graph, it seems to me that the numbers are going up not because we're violating more, but because we're observing more.
I would agree with that.
And eventually this trend should reverse as people are starting to learn that they can't violate. So there should be greater compliance.
We would hope so, or at least some sort of plateau on what we can actually get to. I'll get to our courtesy notices, but we do track the courtesy notice compliance at like pre-inspection, and folks are pretty responsive when we just give them a little nudge. So I think it is an educational campaign. We've also tried to push more Facebook and social media posts regarding the big violations. Here they are, our most common violations. We try to push those kind of whenever they're most prevalent. So we might put a post about signs during campaign season, just remind people not to put them in the park strips, put them on their private property. These are a combination of a few different violations. So when I say signs, that includes banners, that includes commercial signs that are non-conforming, it includes temporary signs. So these have been categorized. But signs are actually the most common violation that we have. There's a lot of banners that get stuck up, or signs that are put out in park strips. Landlord licensing, we've been working really closely with our business license clerks in the last couple of years to really increase compliance and have policy how we hand those off to enforcement. So we've seen an increase in landlord licensing and business licensing. And I'll also mention, don't think I'm going too long on these things, landlord licensing is also ticked up with our courtesy noticing. When we see weed noncompliance or snow noncompliance, we check the ownership, and if we flag it as a potential rental, we follow up on the rental side. So through our proactive enforcement, we're actually finding a lot of noncompliance in other categories like landlord licensing. Then parking, this is front yard parking. We leave the street parking issues primarily to the PD. We are involved with trailers sometimes, but otherwise, this is folks who are parking in a front yard, that's sort of the ordinance setback that they can't. Weed enforcement, park strips, business licensing, sidewalk obstructions, that includes objects placed in the right of way. So when somebody puts the couch out in the park strip, that's under there. And then snow and ice. We must have had a more mild winter last year, because I suspect next year that'll be a little bit higher. And we use courtesy notices first on those, and I'll get into those. And then I did want to cover some of the more intensive sort of categories. So occupancy might not be a huge number on here, but that is a big staff time commitment. It involves actually going into residences, counting beds, and talking to tenants and talking to landlords. So that's probably our most intensive type of case that we have. Vacant and unsafe properties as well, especially the vacant ones that end up on our registry that I'll talk at the end. We kind of have to end up, we have quarterly fines and fees that are accruing on these, and so they become a bit of an administrative burden. They're more difficult cases. Property maintenance, and this is not like refuse. This is plumbing issues, electrical issues. When there's a tenant who has bad housing, sometimes they'll call the city and we'll be involved, and that's the code inspectors who work closely with the building folks as well on those. And then driveway violations. This is an example of a zoning violation that's more intensive. This is when folks are expanding a driveway, and often we're getting there maybe right as the cement's being poured, and now we're telling them they have to remove or cut out something. So those can be a little more intensive as well. And I just wanted to highlight those, as they're not as high numbers, but they require a lot of administrative
Is the
capacity.
over-occupancy like periodic, like as you see a bigger push for that at the start of the school year?
Absolutely, yep. Come August, September, that's typically when we get most of those. And they, primarily in Adams, some in Hillcrest, and throughout the city, but certain neighborhoods are higher in some of those categories.
What's the grace period to get the snow off the sidewalk?
For you, but
I don't have a
It's
sidewalk.
supposed to be within 24 hours. I thought that was what the code
Is it? Okay.
The code specifies a time for commercial properties, which is kind of a funny little nuance to it. It actually has a within X amount of hours, I can't remember what it is. The residential side just says, you shall not have snow and ice on the sidewalk. We, as a policy, don't go out until about 24 hours after a storm ends.
So do you consider rental properties commercial or residential?
No, commercial properties are non-residential properties, but a rented property is a residence by use. So we're talking use of the property.
Okay.
And that's how the code is bifurcated between the two, and I don't know particularly why, but it is. And it really is referring to like pathways up to a commercial location so folks can get in to buy their groceries, I guess.
But they can fall down 6 times getting there.
They can. Yeah. And it's been a rough year for snow out, obviously. Courtesy notice. So we've revamped our courtesy notices a bit and tried to prioritize them more, especially this year. So the 2 primary things we use them for is snow and weeds. We're looking at maybe implementing them for some sign violations, but that's the main categories that we use them for. And these don't generate a case. This is we notice it, we write down the address, and we send out a quick mailer or hang it on a door that says, hey, please cut your weeds, or please move your snow. We'll be back in 48 hours to look at it. Or with the weeds, we give them a few more days. And one thing that we track on this is what the compliance rate is when we return to re-inspect. So if we hand one of these out, over 80% of the time, it's usually cleared up when we come back around and look at it. So that's really nice. And once again, going to the case statistics, that's hundreds of issues, violations that are corrected without creating a case, and the more intensive administrative path. The neighborhood enforcement, we do get out to all neighborhoods, but you will see that there's some neighborhoods that are generate more cases than others, where more violations are found. Adams primarily, we just had a conversation about, heard a discussion about rental properties. Areas with higher rentals tend to have higher rate of violations that we find. There is a connection there is a nexus. You'll kind of see that play out in the statistics. We also, when we're prioritizing snow enforcement, we prioritize wherever schools are. So you'll notice Hillcrest has as many courtesy notices as many of the other neighborhoods. It's smaller. That's because we're getting out, we're checking those pathways to school for snow enforcement. So we do have, and as well as weeds, we try to hit the main drags through town to look for weed violations. And then vacant structures is the last thing I mentioned. So these are structures that are not just vacant, but have some sort of deficiency as well. Usually some sort of property maintenance issue. They become registered, and there are fees that accrue every month as long as they're on that registry. We've registered 34 buildings since this was adopted in 2018. We currently have 20 on there. 15 of those have been kind of long-term structures that have stayed on the list, and we've had 5 that have recently come on it. But we've also had 14 leave. Those are usually through demolition or through renovation, and they'll get off the list. So that's one nice thing to note. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions about code enforcement. I really appreciate the time to discuss that.
Good work.
Oh, thank you.
Wonderful.
So are most of our citizens relatively pleasant when they receive a courtesy violation?
Most are. We have difficult phone calls. It's not an easy job some days, but most are responsive and courteous when they call. They'll talk to Deb first, and if it goes south, Deb will send it on to me, and we'll have a conversation. Sometimes it goes on to Mike, and up to, I'm sure you guys have received letters and things from some of those. But that's the really small percentage of the cases. Like I said, we have hundreds of cases. Very few come angry to my desk. Most are very responsive, and we are very open to working with folks on compliance. We other than occupancy, we do not start with a fine. We start with a notice that gives them time, and we are willing to work with folks on a compliance date. And so hopefully we're just one phone call away from fixing these things, and that's it. And
Even with snow?
even with snow, we start with a courtesy notice.
Okay.
Maybe we're too kind. I can tell Jeannie was, but yes, but even with snow, we start with the courtesy notice because as we see, most people will respond.
I'm going to say First East. First East between Center and First North doesn't respond.
Right, and maybe we should start, if it's a second offense, then maybe we should.
And we do check our courtesy notice list, like, is this a repeat offender? We'll go, we'll go straight to generating a case. It may not immediately be a fine, but it will be a more serious note from us.
I will admit, I received a courtesy violation for snow removal because we were out of town and it snowed. So I think sometimes courtesy notices are well appreciated because there's circumstances that you're not just being lazy, you might be.
And I've even been yelled at for courtesy notices being too strongly worded for folks. So even when we're asking nicely, it can rub people the wrong way.
So I do have a
But I'm used to that.
I do have a question about landscaping post-construction, because
Right.
I know that our code says within a year, correct?
Correct.
They should be landscaped, and I know that often doesn't always occur. So is that?
Especially on the residential side.
Yeah.
So on the property side, we have pretty low minimums, which is don't let it turn into a weed patch. In the park strip side, as you know, you've recently adopted a new park strip ordinance with much clearer language on what needs to go in there. This spring, if it ever arrives, there's a few areas of new subdivisions that we've noticed really low compliance on park strip improvements, missing trees, they'll just throw down rock mulch. We're going to start systematically going through those and starting some enforcement on new construction with that's not meeting our landscaping standards for the
How
park
long
strip.
does it qualify as new construction?
Well, these are pretty new subdivisions.
Okay.
But we'd be looking at things that were built post the adoption of that ordinance.
Okay.
I think, I'm not sure, does Maria tend to speak Spanish, or do you have somebody
She
on
does.
your team? Okay.
Maria speaks Spanish, and as well as one of our front desk secretaries and our business license, one of our business license clerks also speaks Spanish, but she's helped us as well.
Do any of the notices, are they only in English?
They are only in English at this time. That's a good point.
You might want to put something, even if it's in English, with just a note that to receive a, call, if they need to call.
Right, just that basic contact. That's a great
in
starting
Spanish
point that we should consider. I think that's a great point. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Erin.
Thanks.
We now have Rustikina up. Our Parks and Rec Board recently saw this presentation on trails that Russ presented to the board, and they recommended that he present it to City Council, just kind of as an update, a reminder of where we are, some of the goals, and so we've asked Russ to give a quick presentation on trails update.
Thank you, Mayor. As was mentioned, this was a presentation at the request of the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board on January 19th, and mainly to give an update on where we are on projects. We'll move along here to the first one. This is the Coonsler Conservation Easement. I think you're familiar with this area, west of 10th West along the Logan River. This was the result of a gracious donation that became a conservation easement of 47 acres, I believe, from 10th West to the north branch of the Logan River, as you can see on the top left-hand corner of the map there. What we're proposing to do here is to bridge across the Logan River at Trapper Park, and that is to extend the Logan River Trail, which currently terminates at Trapper Park, and go downstream to the north branch, so that would be northwest on this map, and then also to the east towards along the Logan River back towards 10th West as a future trail.
So is the Trapper Drive that kind of
Yes,
dark
Trapper
gray line
is
right there?
here.
Yeah. Okay.
That's right. And estimated start, this kind of fluctuates with a number of things, including spring runoff. But estimated start would be next year. Currently, we have a RAPS grant that was awarded last year for the funding of the design of the trail bridge, and that design is currently underway.
Will that include paving that road, that access road to the park, or is that on private property?
In another RAPS grant that was awarded last year, we do have paving of the entrance and the parking lot at Trapper Park. And again, we were trying to get on their schedule last year and trying to get on the asphalt paving schedule. It's been really hard to do. And that generally doesn't start till about June anyways. So this could end up being early fall, late summer.
With the road in from, 1800 south to basically the bridge, that's a county road.
Oh, that's a county road? Oh, okay.
Yeah, what I'm referring to is the
It's from the
entrance
bridge
into the
in.
park.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
The bathrooms will work this year, right?
Yes, they will, as long as the water stays away from the river stays away from them. Right? Yeah. Okay. The second one here is we refer to this as the Logan Middle Canal. I think this is the Logan Hyde Park Canal system that runs through Logan, runs through the university, as you can see on this map here. This is the improvement of a trail crossing on 1400 North following the canal. We were working with UDOT on a TAP grant to put in what they refer to as a hawk signal. So this is a flashing pedestrian signal on 800 East. That's been installed now, and that project's just about done. And so the continuation of the crossing was at 1400 North, and Public Works Department helped us with the construction of that, which involved a median in the center lane of 1400 North and a crossover to the continuation of the trail based on the canal company's maintenance way. We're currently in discussions with the canal company about having this section of trail that follows their maintenance way of having a license agreement to be able to use that. While we were out there were people using it. It's quite popular. Of course, folks have been using this for decades. But this provides a safe crossing across 1400 North.
Did they raise that? across it, isn't it? Is it
It's
right?
I think it is slightly elevated
Yeah.
as you go over it.
The-
Or else it's the median, but
It's the median.
it's used pretty heavily.
Yeah.
And, you know, with this too, you can see where there's a bike lane on the north side of, this would be westbound traffic on 1400 North. So we had to design that, or engineering actually helped us design for flow through for the bike lane, but also provide a safe passage for people walking or even using bikes to get across the bike lane.
And when there's cross-country stuff going on there, it's
All the time.
heavily used.
Yeah, it's heavy used. Okay. Logan River Blue Trail. And so we had a grant from the state as part of the Blue Trail system. This portion of this was to clear debris so that we could have a navigable waterway for hand carry watercraft as part of the Blue Trail system. So this was the debris removal between Park Avenue and 10th West. These were aftershots. I should have included in here what it looked like before, but it was pretty bad.
With 147.5 ton
Yeah.
debris, that's
A lot of stuff.
Is debris vegetation that has been overgrown or dead, or, what does debris include?
Yeah, it's both, and it's organic and inorganic. So car bodies or parts of car bodies, along with
Not hobbies.
Oh, my hearing aids.
car bodies. Yeah,
Not dead bodies. Not
there's a
dead
part of a
bodies.
car out at Rapper Park.
yeah.
Right by the
there's-
river.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, there's a few.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's 47 loads, about almost 150 tons.
Good job.
That was hauled to the landfill.
Yeah, Russ, another thing, we talked about these invasive willow. There's a
Crack
name-
willows.
Black willows. Crack willows. Thank you for the.
That's okay.
We could go off on this one, but that's fine. Are we removing those systematically?
We're removing them under the permit that we had. They were, in the case of the ones that were growing in the riverbank, it was case-by-case basis, because we had to ensure that we were not going to compromise the structure of the riverbank, right? If you take out a root ball, there's a chance that you could weaken the bank and cause other problems. So, we were working closely with BioWest as our consultant to be on site to help the crew that was hired to do all the debris removal. And it took a while. They were into this about 2.5 months to clear, about 6 blocks.
6 blocks.
Yeah, a lot of stuff.
So with the Blue Trail, is there a designation that we can see as to where it's safe to do kayaking?
Yes, in fact, you'll see it on another slide that
Okay.
I have here that talks to that. 1800 South Trail, this is at, of course, 1800 South. It currently is a gravel walkway between that street and the Logan River Trail to the north. It's between two subdivisions, the Logan River Estates on the west and the Spring subdivision on the east. What this project involves is widening the trail, and this is being done in partnership with the Logan River Estates. They're granting us the additional, I think it's about 4 feet of width to improve the trailhead, as you see here in these illustrations. And it's been a project on our list for quite some time. Okay. So to your question, Tom, earlier in regards to the Blue Trail, we're working in partnership with the county in what we've received as a boater access grant through the State Department of Natural Resources. And that funding is in the form of design funds. So BioWest has been hired by the county to develop the engineering and design for access into the Logan River at 4 designated locations. One is in working in concert with USU up at the Water Lab. In fact, the Water Lab location that we previously had looked at is where their new parking lot improvements have been made. And because of that, under their recommendation, they felt that we should look at actually the west end of the Water Lab area on Canyon Road. I don't have a picture of this, but if you've been that way, the last building to the west, they have a little triangular piece of property, and they seem to be more in favor of having public access at that location than where we originally had visited. There's some work that we'll have to do to get everything straight between the entities involved, but that's one. The other two are on this slide here. At Rendezvous Park, you see that on the left, and then, or excuse me, on the right, and then Tracker Park is on the left. So that's 3. The fourth one is at the 6 South Park location, which is the Mendon Road and 1900 West. And that location is currently undeveloped, but that is thought as the takeout location. If you're getting in at any one of these other 3, that's where the Blue Trail ends, is at Mendon Road.
If you go in at the Water Lab, though, you can't get past First Dam, can you?
Well, it's below First Dam.
Below First Dam.
But
There's the rocket
to
diversion.
your point, it's the diversion
Yeah,
at
the diversion.
River Hollow Park.
Okay.
So, and that's all part of this larger watershed grant that's, been discussed for some time now. So that's part of the reason why, although we want to be working closely with USU, Rendezvous and Schrapper will probably be first in terms of these boater ramp access points.
At the River Hollow Park, I think there needs to be some thought as to where the takeout location should be, because there's some private residences and then there's some fencing. So,
yeah, the takeout has to be at city property, and that's why we look at the parks.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay?
You don't want to miss that ramp there.
No. No. It's a long trip after that.
That's a long drop.
That's right. Okay, so this is Stewart Nature Park. This was some trail clearing that was done back in September with volunteers. The purpose of this trail, as you see it in the slide here on the left, was to provide a safer diversion away from the amphitheater that's located in the park. And so an alignment was put together, and with the help of a bunch of volunteers, they cut through there and got that set for us. The next step in this is applying for a state outdoor classroom grant that we're working on right now to replace the amphitheater with what is referred to as a learning circle. So it's kind of like an amphitheater, outdoor place where people can meet, usually no bigger than the size of an elementary classroom. But we know that size of people have been used by Wilson School on different occasions, which is just down the street from this park, for their science and other outdoor education uses. And so we'll see what happens with that, but as it states here, estimated start to be this fall. That probably is pushing into next year at this stage.
And I'm assuming we've worked with the Stewart family.
Yes, and so one of our board members is helping us with developing this site plan, which through the folks that we're working with at Stewart Nature Park, they're helping to convey the message out. And we have their buy-in on moving forward. They would just, not so much the family, but others that we're working with, they would just like us to move faster. South Main Tunnel at 600 South. I think you've know at least a little bit about this project. This is one that was made possible through UDOT. In fact, if you'll recall, this was one of the top priorities. In fact, it was the top priority for funding for the category that they use for these types of alternative transportation projects.
And that answers some of the questions we were asking in the last meeting, so,
That's helpful.
yeah.
I think that's a good plan.
So the cul-de-sac is there, and then the entrance goes a little bit to the north, and they
Yeah.
acquired that already, so.
So that house will come up.
This project, by the way, is tied to, and you'll see it in this next slide, with the realignment work going on 100 West. This is only hardly a block away from that work. And so it made a lot of sense to try to think about design for the connectivity between this underpass and what's going on a block away. Okay. So with that, 100 West realignment, this is a project that Public Works has been involved heavily in. And as you probably know, some of the work on this is moving towards 8991. Thereby, the businesses there on the corner of First West and the highway. That's part of this realignment. So where we're talking about from the last slide on the 6 South Underpass, the plans call for the sidewalk and trail connectivity to 100 West, in addition to what the Logan Gateway project is doing, which is also making a trail connection along the Logan River in their development to connect with our trail system that stops right now at the Inaway retirement home. There's a bridge that we have across the river to the west. That bridge comes over to the trail and will complete a large missing section between First West and Main Street. Okay. We're getting near the end here. 800 West Regional Trail. This is a project that was in 2 phases. Phase 2 happened to go first because it was ready at the time. We were working with Cache County on extending the Logan River Trail along Park Avenue at 1600 South. Right now there's a pedestrian crossing that has an activated head signal there, or beacon there. Crosses the highway and goes down to 8th West and stops currently at 1800 South. The next phase of that is to continue the trail from 1800 South down to 22nd South, which is the city limit between Logan and Nibley. And 2200 South is critical because Nibley's Heritage Park is at that intersection, and so it helps to follow the idea that we're connecting parks with trails. Okay, and finally, 1800 South Trail. So we talked about this one in an earlier slide. The yellow line is the one I was referring to earlier between 1800 South and the Logan River Trail. We're also looking at going south from 1800 South through the Rose Hill subdivision and the Woodmore Point, I believe, subdivision. And then working our way along the north side of Spring Creek, crossing it and coming out to 16th West. 16th West is the street that dead ends into Trafford Park. And so that's the reason why we're wanting to make that connection with the green line that you see on the slide. That's the end of the slides. Lots of stuff going on. Each one of them kind of on their own schedule for a number of different reasons. And some that we haven't anticipated yet, but probably will in terms of, like I said, spring runoff could delay a number of things just because of where we have some of these projects located.
So with the exception of the Blue Trail, are these all mixed use for pedestrian and bike? I'm assuming people aren't going to use their bikes on the Blue Trail.
No, probably not.
Your water bike.
Probably.
But otherwise they're mixed use?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Shared
So,
use.
so when we talk about mixed use or shared use paths, it wasn't too long ago that the council saw a ordinance amendment, right? For micro-mobility devices, right? So, we have to think about that in terms of use going forward because that is allowed.
All right, sorry we took a little more time than we thought with under mayor staff reports, but we are finished. Thanks, Russ.
Those were good
Thank you.
reports.
Jason, airport?
Oh, that's not on tonight, so it's,
Yeah.
hello. We thought, you did email me that, but again, I was thinking it was on the agenda. All right, Jason.
Well, add Jason up.
Those were
I mean, dressed up and everything.
I know, we don't want him not to get his moment in the sun.
I appreciate that. Sorry, I'm new at this. Can I plug into one of these? Does it matter?
Jeff's right behind you.
Jeff, right.
Okay, so yeah, thanks for having me. I am Jason Ryrie. I'm the airport director. Started at the end of October. A couple of you I've met, most of you I have not, so bear with me. They say that public speaking is the second to death on what people are scared of, so this is not my forte, but I'm here and I just speaking about something I'm passionate about. I love airports, I love aviation, and so thanks for allowing me the time to speak on this. So March is actually Aviation Appreciation Month, and so with that, basically I have an article from Fox News that talks about a lot of things with the airport, the millions of dollars it brings in, and across America it's $274 million and 3,600 people employed at airports. I won't read the whole thing for you, but Fox 13, maybe someday we can have Logan make a month aviation. A lot of cities around the country do March, so maybe in the future we can think about that. But another article, USA Today, that was posted last month, airline pilots got the sharpest pay increase since 2010. Pilots, dancers, and software developers were the top of the list. And
If you want to email me links to these articles, I can share them with
Yeah, that would be great.
okay, yeah, I definitely will. But just to break it down real fast, the average pay increase for pilots was 71.9%. Due to inflation, that was 25.1%. The average salary for pilots is $198,000, and that was number one increase over the past 10 years. So,
It's good to be a pilot.
yeah.
Well,
So
and
what-
USU is training a lot of pilots out
Yes,
here.
they are.
So.
So that's gonna. I'm not coming up on here. Oh, maybe. Okay, there it is. So this is what I really want to talk to you guys about tonight. Is UDOT put together some reports, And based on aviation, sorry, move down. So real fast, as far as Utah goes, this is a Utah specific, the whole state report done. And so just to point some of the things out, number 3 in total pilot growth, number 5 in total aircraft operations. So you can see Utah alone is pretty high up on the list of a lot of that. But the main slide I want to show you in all this, and this is all on UDOT's website, so I'm not going to bore you and go through every bit of detail on this, but I can email that to you as well. So some of this right in this section, the cost versus benefit, I think is a very interesting section. So it talks about the average funding for the 45 airports. Salt Lake City International is excluded. It says over the next 10 years, the airports are estimated to need $42.6 million. And right now, they're on track to get $33.6 million. So we're basically saying, and the amount of benefit that comes out of it is high, much higher than how much is put into it. And this slide right here is what I really want to show you. So this has all the economic impacts by airports. The top left is everything with commercial service, which Logan Cache Airport does not have. So that's your Salt Lake, Cedar City, St. George, Provo. But everything else is non-commercial. And so this is Logan right here. Thank you. So what's impressive about it is besides Sky Park in Bountiful and South Valley in Salt Lake, we're number 1. So one or two, 3, I guess, 3 technically, but so that our tax revenue, $640,000, total annual economic activity, $17 million. And so I'm fairly new here. I came from St. George, and I did not realize how busy it was going to be by a long shot. And so that's the main thing I want to show you, is just how much money is being brought in. And that's what this whole report is basically showing, is how much money is getting put in and how much money is coming out. So the second one, this is actually a report done on Logan Cache Airport itself. So it has some really great information on it. How many people are employed, the annual payroll, how much it's spending, the economic activity we talked about, and the tax revenue.
So that 8.6 million is what they expect is needed over the next 10 years?
Yes. So obviously you guys probably know the history of it. Utah State training program we talked about, Cache Valley Electric, and we're just a stop for a lot of other routes coming through. There's quite a few other hangars being built, corporate hangars right now, quite a few projects in the works. We have 5 different corporate hangars being built this summer, we hope. So a lot going on at the airport. This section right here kind of is a breakdown of our airport, of the benefits. And so they're estimating we need $8.6 million over the next 10 years. So that's the per year, the $860,000 investment needs. And then the economic benefit annually of $17.7 million. So that's kind of showing what we need versus the benefit that would come in. And so this is just a breakdown of all of that employment, payroll spending, and how they come up with that 17 million. So, like I said, I don't want to really go over everything in here, but basically what it's saying is, I don't know, what you put in is what you get out, and airports, I think nationwide, statewide, and here are definitely underfunded. And so that, this is on UDOT's website, and there's just a lot going on at the airport, and me being new here, I've never met everybody here, so I just want to talk about it since we are the Logan Cache Airport. And so like Utah State, obviously 400-ish students enrolled in their program. They fly nonstop. And so I just think there's that. So the other thing I want to tell you guys about is we installed, it's a virtual tower. It's called Bird Tower. Just a little antenna on top of our building that tracks planes. And tracks them really well. It knows everything they're doing, their speed, their height. It knows which hangar they pulled out of. It knows which connector they got off of on the runway. And since they installed that, they said that Logan Airport is the #1 busiest airport in the state behind Salt Lake International. Over 500 operations a day, operations, a landing or a takeoff. About triple of what St. George is. And that's where I came from, so I keep bringing that up. I didn't say that. So very busy, and I think so the state, UDOT is who paid for that antenna we put on. They put them on all over the state. And so now that they know that, they are going to start putting more regulations on us because of how busy we are. The FAA is going to find out about it, and they're going to start putting more regulations on us.
We hope it comes with more money.
Hopefully, that's the next thing. Is hopefully it will come with more money. But with that said, they typically do make us come up with our match, either 5 or 10% or something like that. But typically, they do pay for a lot of stuff. So yeah, that's kind of my presentation about the economic impact on the community. I feel like I love it here. I love, I tell people I moved here and or what I do, especially here, and people know of the airport, and everyone knows my son or somebody that either trains there, has a hangar there, or flies out of there. St. George, it wasn't the same. It was just like Guy West flies out of there. And so I believe that the airport is a big part of our community, and everybody knows someone from there. And so I just kind of wanted to come today and provide some of this information. Like I said, this is on UDOT's website, and I hope we can work more in the future and continue to grow our airport and just provide the students and all the hangar owners and everybody that uses the airport a good experience when they're there. So.
Okay, thank you, Jason.
So, Jason, I think that, I'll just say this because we've been talking, I'm on the Airport Authority Board along with Holly, and we've been talking about the past and the future of the airport. They're in the middle of doing another general master plan. So that they can anticipate growth and they can anticipate what's going to be required to service the flights that are coming in and out of the airport today and hopefully the increase tomorrow. But it's fun to realize that the airport was in existence during World War II. And it trained pilots for World War II. It was one of the prime training grounds. And there is a tower out there that was an observation tower that was built at that time by the Army Corps of Engineers. And there is a push right now to somehow create a museum observation place at the airport that can be a tourist, something that people can come and watch the airplanes land, they can watch them take off. But it's interesting to note that Logan and Cache County support the airport here. It is, and we have done for many, many years, and it's done through a cooperative agreement. And I do think it provides an economic engine that is often unknown or often unappreciated in the valley. So
you left St. George, and now you're here shoveling like a boatload of snow.
Yep.
What excited you the most about coming to Logan? Because obviously it was not the weather, but I'm just curious what was it about this position that made you want to come up here?
The weather, believe it or not, had some part of it. When people ask me that question, I say ask me in August. I do not like the heat. And so I grew up in Salt Lake, and so I love the mountains, I love the snow. I've not experienced the cold here or this amount of snow, but so it has been interesting. Rich Staymeyer was an airport manager here a couple managers or so ago, and he's now the manager down in St. George. And so just talking with him and just the growth and everything I've been learning has been leaps and bounds. Every day something new. It's amazing what they say about an airport. It's like a city inside of a city. It's a little mini city. We deal with everything. We have streets, we have power, we have water.
we have gas.
You have gas.
We have fuel.
You name it. Sewer coming in. We have guys doing sewer stuff. And I'm by myself out there.
Some years ago, there was a conversation, long-term conversation about getting commercial service. Is that got any legs at all, or is that completely forgotten?
I believe as of today, the airport board, I don't know if they'll ever forget that as a possibility, because if you look at some of the numbers of the people who do have commercial service, I think there's a lot that goes into it. I think boards with Logan City and Cache County and the Airport Authority Board, I think population-wise, I think what happened to Ogden, Ogden had commercial service and lost it. I think that has put some fear in people's minds. And so I don't think that'll ever be forgotten. There is space on the airport for terminals in the future, and that is definitely being kept in mind when it comes to the master plans and things like that. I just think that nobody wants to pull the trigger on that too soon and spend all the money building terminals and putting the infrastructure in for that if it's not all. And so I don't think that'll ever be taken off the table for the Logan Airport.
We're too close to Salt Lake.
I don't know if we're too close to Salt Lake. I think Ogden might have been too close to Salt Lake. I think a big question with it is where would you fly to? Would you fly to Salt Lake? Would someone pay $300 to fly there and then get on a flight to somewhere else? Would you fly to Denver? I think a lot of things like that. But I think if you could find the right airline to partner with, a couple flights a week to Denver or somewhere that could take you to the rest of the world could possibly be a stepping stone someday. So yeah, I don't think it'll ever be taken off the table for the airport. But yeah, we have a lot going on. Like you said, the tower is really interesting. The glass blew out of it. About 100 yards of glass all over the runways. It took about 12 hours to clean it up. And so that's what kind of started this conversation. Utah State owns the tower. So the liability of it kind of scared them. So they're trying to figure out something to do with it, and we're working with the board and some other organizations to try to keep it. We're trying to install a new fuel farm, which stores all our fuel for the airplanes. It's really, really old. It's right next to some wetlands. The FAA is mandating that we fix that. We have a new taxi lane coming in, which has at least 5 corporate hangars for 5 corporate jets, along with 5 to 8 to 10 other hangars going to be put in there. And we're putting new taxiway lights and signs in. there's a lot going on out there all the time. And so yeah, if you guys ever want to come out, we'd love to give you a tour, or drive in a fire truck or something like that. So.
All right, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Can I make one comment though? Just I think the partnership has been a very good one between Cache County and Logan City in having an airport. However, I'm on one note, and I keep hitting on that note, but it is something that we have to consider if we ever get to the point where we're dumping significant amounts of taxpayer money into the airport, we need to consider a more equitable distribution, because right now Logan City and Cache County contribute. Logan City taxpayers pay, let's say, 75% of the load, because we're roughly half. And I know these aren't exact figures, but we're half of Cache County, and then we're 100% of Logan City. So as long as we're contributing what we're currently contributing, maybe we have a little greater interest. If we got to the point where we're contributing $8.6 million, we'd have to consider a more equitable distribution, because the problem is Logan City has a lot of low-income residents because they want to be close to services. Some of the county areas outside Logan have a little higher income because they want lots of property and big houses. So is it equitable that the low per capita income people pay 75% of a joint service, or maybe should that be spread a little more equally over a larger population? It's just something to consider whenever we jointly participate with Cache County. The distribution of property taxes, we have to make sure it's something that is more important to us. And airport, I don't know. I don't know where we stand. We do have a lot of commercial activity in Logan, but that commercial activity is meant to support residents who live elsewhere and come to Logan to enjoy that commercial activity. So it's just something that we need to keep in mind. If we ever get to the point where we're talking big money, if we're talking the current $80,000 that we contribute between Cache County, maybe that's not too big of a deal.
It makes sense. I believe the 80 million is like we talked about, a lot of that is federal funding. So there's no way we're ever going to be asking anybody for $80 million, but definitely some good points. And the $80,000, I think that was about 10 years ago that was negotiated. And it is what it is. We try to get by based on those numbers and everything like that. And, but yeah, I'd love for you guys to come and see what we're working with. And I think a lot of not only that contract, but the contract we have with hangar owners and the FBO, the guys that provide fuel, the landing fees, I believe it'd be in everybody's interest to reassess a lot of that stuff. Just based on the last couple of years, everything is more than doubled in price, but the airport fees have not. But yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Next on our agenda is a planning commission update. Fine.
Oh, that'll be quick. Yes, it will. So, planning commission, they approved a daycare. And the old Ephraim apartments, which we've discussed in the past, were continued yet again. They are trying to find a parking agreement to satisfy their parking requirements. There are 2 land development code issues or sections that they reviewed and approved to send to us, and we will be workshopping those. That's it.
Thank you.
Nicely done.
See, I told you it was going to be short.
Thank you, thank you. If you were here for the action item ordinance 23-03 that has been continued to our next meeting for March 21st, is that correct?
Yeah, maybe I'll make a motion and formally approve it.
I move that we continue the public hearing for ordinance 23-03 to the March 21st meeting.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say nay. We are continuing it to March 21st. Next in our agenda for action items, we have a public hearing for ordinance 23-05. Mike?
Yeah, we workshopped this last time, and I can go through it again, or if you have any questions, however you want to proceed.
I don't have any questions.
Questions?
I don't have any either. Surprisingly enough.
All right. No questions from the council. We'll open up for the public hearing portion. If you'd like to comment on this specific item, please come up to the mic and state your name, your place of residence.
Gail Yost, Dr. Gail Yost, because I work with a lot of people. The land development code, you speak it very well. They speak it pretty well. A lot of the public doesn't speak it at all. And so what changes are going to be happening with this that we workshopped, but we may not, the public may not understand?
Mike?
Yeah, I'll give you a brief, just a brief overview of that, if you prefer. So in this packet of amendments for the Land Development Code, we are removing wall art from a list of activities that requires a permit, freedom of speech type of thing. Unless it's got a commercial element to it, we can't require a permit for it. We've modified, updated the language in legally existing non-conforming uses, structures, the things to clarify and clean up the way that language is written. We have changed or added some language to the administrative enforcement section, like Aaron was talking about tonight. Civil fees, we're proposing to go from $50 to $100, over occupancy violation fees, $250 to $500. And then a little bit of cleanup language in there, filing fee for an appeal, so somebody has a little bit of skin in the game, so they really make sure they're appealing a real thing. And then we updated our definitions for our critical lands that we adopted last time. Driveway approaches, murals, usable outdoor space, things like that. So that's it in a nutshell.
Thank you, Mike. Anybody else who would like to comment on this specific item? Now we'll bring it back to the council. Any last questions or?
I'll move we approve ordinance 23-05.
I will move to second it.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say nay. Ordinance 23-05 passes, adopted? What is it?
Either one.
Either one.
All right, approved. All right. Next, our public hearing for ordinance 23-06, another code amendment.
I'll give you a little, just a dog and pony show on this 30-second update. So just this package of amendments included amendments to 09, 29, 30, 31. Basically, we call it the residential driveways. In 1709, we changed some of the language, or at least made it a little bit more legible or clarified it as far as how we apply regulations to double fronted streets. And then we took all the residential driveway and parking language and moved it to 1729.
Okay, you said something really fast. Double fronted streets.
Double fronted lots, I'm sorry.
Okay.
It's where it's got a street on both sides.
Okay.
Thank you for catching that.
That was okay. I was like, wait a minute.
Double frontage lots. We added some more driveway specifications, make it clearer, easier to understand what's being required on a driveway or what's allowable. We did it for a primary driveway. We did it for a secondary driveway. I think as Aaron alluded to, we get some complaints and enforcement on this. And then also a circular driveway. So the idea is is give people some more options when they want to put in a second driveway to get to a legitimate or legal parking stall. But we also don't want to see the front yard paved entirely across the frontage. So we came up with some numbers and percentages that we think work. And then give you an example
Mike,
of.
Could you please go back one more? So on that one, on the where it starts the 45-degree extension, what is the distance between the sidewalk and where you can start that?
Well, you can start the angle out the basically where the sidewalk is, and then as long as you're cutting that, what we didn't want to have was a driveway that came all the way down to the sidewalk and then across the park strip. So we want you to get back to a legal parking area, but we also want to leave some landscaping, some green space in front.
Thank you.
So there's no setback on the, there's no, they're going to be paving part of the setback behind the sidewalk?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not good at math, so I couldn't tell you exactly what the line is, but it's like, if it's right over run, or I don't know how you measure that, but we didn't want to put in a numeric distance because it would be based on how far back you actually want to go before you cut it up straight. But the idea was to create this green area that wasn't going to be hardscaped.
And then they also.
Or xeriscaped.
They could xeriscape, not zero-scape, but xeriscape.
Xeriscape.
And then they have to maintain side setbacks.
Correct, 2 foot minimum.
Okay.
And this is the current standard in place now, so this is what's being applied right now.
Mike,
Yes, sir.
on the recreational vehicles, I'd just like clarification. 1731D, it says you can park an RV behind the house or on the side of the house or in a garage, I guess.
Correct.
But then it said, trying to find where it says.
Temporary occupancy?
No.
No, it's like, there's a light.
Except for, okay, outside of a legally established parking area. Is that in the front driveway that's legally established or what? Where can an RV be parked legally?
Yeah, so if you look back at this graphic, you can legally park a vehicle. When we look at a house, development plans, we issue building permits, you have to have 2 parking stalls for that house. And those are typically in your garage. And then we also say if you want to use the area around your garage or the back of your house or behind the front plane of the house, you can establish legal parking areas there. The driveway, you can park in that, but it's not counted for your legal parking areas. Everybody parks their driveway, but it's not used to establish your base of 2 stalls per house.
Okay, what, the Nevada-shaped piece onto the left of that, right there, so that is not allowed for an RV?
Right, that's just an extension to a legally permitted parking area on the side of your house.
Okay, that's just, I just wanted to clarify.
That's fine. So just some additional changes to this. We're proposing to update the connectivity standards. We've got some issues with subdivisions that come in that requiring 1, 2, or 3 connections to outside subdivisions. It's been a little challenging. Infill, just updated that. Residential parking, this is what you're getting at. We've added some standards in there about how long you can park an RV on your property, where it's got to go. And the Planning Commission recommended we put in a period of time of 10 days. So if you've got guests or residents or friends or whatever, they can camp in your yard for up to 10 days. So.
As long as they're behind the
Correct.
the front plane of the house.
Right.
I'm just going for all the what ifs. So somebody's been parking their trailer in front of their house for 30 years. And I know some, but anyway. Are they going to say, well, it's grandfathered, I've been doing this for 30 years?
No. I mean, it probably will, but
Well,
They'll probably try.
No is the correct answer.
so there's no grandfathering.
no, there's not a grandfather. It's really not, parking a vehicle or an RV in front of your house is really not, I mean, it's a type of use, but it's not a use to be recognized as a legally established type of use.
Tom, are you talking about on the street?
No, I'm talking about people that have parked in front of their garage or to the side of their driveway.
But it's still in front of the house.
And they've been doing it, and I know them, I know I'm gonna get calls on this, but I agree with what we're doing. So I just wanted to be clear, how much time will they have to adjust, maybe get another off-site lot or whatever it
Well,
is?
if they've been there for 30 years and we haven't had a complaint on it, I'm thinking it'll probably be another 30 years before we really know about it. I mean, it's complaint driven, unless we see it, if it's licensed, and they're moving around, it's operable. I mean, it's just one of those weird things that are hard to catch or hard to really enforce on. But you can tell the difference between somebody that's using their RV or is just sitting there kind of crumbling into the ground, then it becomes a different issue with enforcement. But yeah, I mean, we probably won't be aware of it unless somebody lets us know.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you read what the ordinance was, it was always prohibited.
Right.
This is not a new prohibition. The old language was the parking or storage of an RV is prohibited in neighbor residential districts except when located outside of front yards, minimum front setbacks, and public right-of-ways. So this is not,
We
it's a
didn't pass it.
reworking of the
No, it's
language,
not
but
new.
it's
They're just gonna
not
enforce it.
correct. Well, it always could have been enforced.
But we got a big team going.
I'm just saying, it's not that this is something that
We didn't.
we're adding. This is just a revision of the language.
We just try to clarify
Clarification of language,
to
but
make it
it's
easier
not
to
a
understand.
new ordinance prohibiting people from parking their RVs in their driveway.
Thank you.
Yeah, stop parking your RV.
No, I think that's what people say is you passed a new ordinance.
Right.
It's not a new,
always
it's
been
just
allowed.
clarified, correct? It's
And
always
you-
not been allowed.
And you've not been allowed to live in your RV in your yard either.
Well, some people. Anyway,
Depends on how much construction is going to be.
we've got one in there.
Okay, that's
it.
That's it.
I think we have like three.
Any comments before we open it up for? No? All right. This is a public hearing. If you'd like to comment on this specific item on our agenda, please come up to the mic and state your name and your place of residence.
Just say thank you.
All right. Looks like nobody wants to comment on this. I'll bring it back to the council.
I'll move we approve ordinance 23-06.
Second?
Being moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say nay. Ordinance 23-06 passes.
Gosh, Mike, this is almost just your show tonight.
I know, Rich only has like a teeny little, like, 2 sentences.
And I should have put that at the very end.
Which is going to take 10 minutes for that line.
He had the whole last meeting.
He always gets all the accolades too.
I don't know, he's being cranky tonight.
Gotta grab it.
Just put the glasses on, he's trying to look serious.
Last word about the airport.
I know, it's true.
Our last action item is for ordinance 23-07. It's a public hearing as well.
Okay, just real briefly, this is modify 1728, 1732, and what we did in this was basically eliminate 1728 because the way it's written, it's not applied and written in the same fashion. Really, when we see developments coming through, they're a little more urbanized. You don't see it like open space, it's traditionally open space, so it's all nomenclature. We moved it all up into 1732. Standards didn't really change. We still require set-asides for multifamily or commercial industrial. So instead of calling it outdoor space, we'll call it usable outdoor space as well as landscaping. And we added the language on usable outdoor space from mixed use discussions we had a few months ago to make sure people understood what that is. But
Can you go back one slide?
yeah.
Usable outdoor space includes.
Yeah, that includes patios, decks, green roofs, play areas, active rec areas, public gathering areas, and then natural working space areas.
Are those patios, decks accessible to everyone or accessible only to a particular unit?
They're supposed to be accessible to everybody. So,
So a balcony doesn't count?
correct.
Okay, thank you. And I don't know how you plan a green roof. Whatever.
Yeah,
I'll bet we could figure something out.
yeah, we got a guy up here that might help us figure that
Yeah, we
out.
could figure that out, so.
I don't know. Okay, it's good.
Like
It's all good.
Soccer field.
Any other comments before we open it up? If you'd like to comment on this specific item for the agenda, please come up to the mic and state your name and your place of residence. All right, bring it back to the council.
This was unanimously approved by our planning commission, correct?
Correct.
So I would move approval of ordinance 23-08.
07.
07.
07?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, you changed the slide.
Yeah.
07.
Oh, sorry.
23-07.
Yes, there was some.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, please say nay. Ordinance 23-07 passes. That's it for our action items. Next, we have workshop items, and first, we have Rich for resolution 23-05.
One item to consider, a request to appropriate $65,466. This is a grant the engineering department received from the state of Utah to design some stabilization for the Logan River near the water lab. Pretty narrow section, it's just where it hits the bank and turns.
Okay.
Sounds like a good idea.
Is that right by Herms?
No,
It's
it's
actually,
further east.
yeah,
Further
further
east.
down. I think
Don't
it's
go put a
just as it comes down and then it turns to the west.
This is Corps of Engineers Silverly program, I think. They came and did a tour, what, 18 months ago?
Yeah.
So then once it gets designed, then we'll go back for more funding to actually fix it. This is the design money.
All right. Thank you, Rich. Next, ordinance 23-08 by Mike. Code amendment.
I'm back. Okay, this one is, whoops.
I'm like, wait a minute.
We're gonna do it all again. Ordinance 23-08, signs and murals. So we are amending 1720 and 1733. 1720 is our historic district overlay. There's language in there that wasn't consistent with the recent historic district guidelines that we adopted. So I just took out the existing language of the code and pulled in the language from the standards so that they're all saying the same thing. And then we added standards for putting murals in the historic district. Basically, don't allow them on street-facing facades. They're permitted on the plain side, rear, or alley wall. Not to exceed 75% of the wall area. Don't put them on unpainted wall surfaces or unpainted brick. Nothing with fences. Don't obscure architectural features of the building, and then no lighting. We want to encourage murals. We also want to have some kind of standards around them.
Can I ask a question? Sure. Unpainted wall surfaces, I know they were, when the planning commission talked about it, they talked about bricks specifically. But we do have some in the historic downtown where part of the building is brick and part of it is unpainted cinder block.
Yeah.
So is that I mean, do we want to apply the same standard to cinder block?
No, it's really getting just at brick. We don't want to see unpainted brick painted.
Right.
Cinder block's okay. We don't have the same affinity for that as we do brick. If you've got a brick surface, you can do a mural on a surface and then apply it or attach it to the wall.
Right.
That's an alternative.
Okay. So, okay.
It's written though.
We're trying not to damage the brick.
Correct. It's written that it's prohibited on unpainted brick surfaces. That's the way the code is written.
Okay.
So the wall east of the Center Street Grill, I don't think they painted on the brick. I think they put up a fabric.
Yeah, that's a vinyl, it's like a vinyl type of surface. Peeling off, then you take one and...
So would that be illegal under your...
No, it's not paint. So that you can remove and it won't damage the brick underneath it.
That's good.
But we can't, because of what we just did, there will be no we will not regulate that at all.
As
What the
long as
mural
there's
is.
no commercial.
Yeah, we won't require a permit for it, but these are the standards you'll have to abide by in the historic district.
No, I meant we are not going to, we just passed the,
Yeah, the design review permit for.
right, we won't have any design review permits for
Correct.
those. Okay.
As long as there's not commercial in it, then it falls under our sign ordinance.
Right. And then in 33, which is a sign ordinance, we excluded murals, wall art from sign regulations unless they contain commercial messages. So think what's the thing we see at Christmas, the polar bear Coke guys, stuff like that. If you see a mural going up with got Coke in it, then obviously that's a sign. Clean up the language in the sign ordinance. We added a setback for signs. Currently it's 0 from the property line, so we added 18 inches, and those are typically the monument signs you'll see or an entrance sign. Clarify that you can have construction signs, more than just one, out on the fencing, so we've got a bunch out here around the library. Typically you'll see that on a project. And then in a community event scenario, we allow for substitution of temporary signs instead of banners. So people tend to use those little 20-inch by 20-inch or 2x2 temporary signs as opposed to a big banner. And that's it. Questions?
So what regulation happens if the mural is deemed inappropriate?
By who?
Holly gets 50 phone calls.
Like nudity or profanity
Or something.
Well, I think then you call the police chief, but as a
I mean, there are definitions of, in the code of what is considered profane
I think
or.
community standards, right?
Does that apply? I mean, I'm serious.
It is a good question. I mean, there is obscene art, there is a definition in state code, not necessarily obscene art, but obscenity is not protected speech either. And so I think we would have some teeth to fight back against it, but it would be interesting for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, just questioning, because I know when we were doing design review permits, you could kind of.
Well, but the problem is we had no standards on what a mural could be or should be.
Right, I
Because
know.
you really can't regulate art. It's
Right.
freedom of expression, freedom of speech, but it does cross a line occasionally where you're looking at like, oh, wait a second, that's obscene. So, yeah, it'd be interesting to see if that happens.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want naked ladies in the alleyways.
Or naked men.
Yeah.
Or naked men.
Either, yeah. It's not
What about political
But then one
message?
could argue if it's a reproduction of the David, is that considered art or is that considered nudity, right?
Yeah, I
mean,
know.
this kind of goes to that
Yeah.
issue that happened in the Cache County School District where a teacher's using art and people felt that didn't meet community standards. I think it's a reasonable conversation to have.
Yeah.
It is, and I can look a little closer into the
Yeah.
standards and then apply it.
How about
Sorry, I didn't mean to give you more work to do.
He's gonna just give it tomorrow anyway,
fair
so.
It's a giver gift.
political messages?
We put a proposed time limitation here for temporary signs, 60 days. But when we step back, there's a court case, a Supreme Court case from 2015 that treats, let's look at the freedom of speech, really. And so political signs are kind of that ultimate expression of speech. So we really don't regulate them, other than you can have one candidate, one sign for one candidate in your yard at any given time. So if Jeannie's running for dog catcher and it's an elected position, I can put her sign in my yard, but I can't put 2 or 3 or 4 or 5.
What if it's not an individual candidate, it's a issue?
Yeah, you can do that too. So Wild Utah, you see those signs occasionally. The one about the open space proposition, that was out for a little bit. You can do those, but again, it's limited to one sign per message, per candidate on your property at any given time.
How does the small political sign size daycare sign in front of the house on Center Street fit into the category? It's a temporary sign, but it's the size of a political sign and it's on a little wire thing and it's been there for a long time.
Should ask Aaron that question.
He slipped out really fast.
Yeah, gone.
But no, I mean, those are questions, they're not political, they're
more social issues.
No, they're not even social
Okay,
issues.
but
It's
sometimes they can be.
But it's somebody's business. In this case, it's a business.
If they're advertising for their business, it's like a home occupation, there's a limitation on the size and the placement of the sign. They can put one on the side of the house or the side of the building. But generally, if you're doing, and I'm assuming that's how they were permitted, although I don't remember the daycare there.
It was a very unique daycare.
Yeah.
Because there's no parking in front of the house.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to look at it. It may be illegal. I don't know what that would.
Yeah, I don't, I just was curious how that fit into the big picture, so.
Okay.
All right, on to our last one.
Oh,
Accessory dwelling units.
Oh, good.
Oh, boy. Okay, so this is just a workshop on accessory dwelling units. So if you remember, we adopted, well, back in 2021, House Bill 82 was passed by the state legislature, mandated that all jurisdictions allow for internal ADUs. So an internal ADU is either it's like a basement unit or it's part of your back of your house, but it's within the footprint of the existing dwelling. You can add on to your home, so I'm going to add a bedroom on, and then come back and say, well, now I want to create an ADU in that. That's legally as well, but we didn't allow for any kind of detached types of situations. So when that bill was passed, some of you were involved with trying to craft a language that looked at university towns and said, hey, wait a sec, we have different issues than a normal city. We've got a lot of rental pressure, a lot of kids. So this may have some implications for that. So they carved out an exception for university cities and basically said you've got to put this on at least 32% of your land that's zone residential. So the result is we've got about 1,400 acres, give or take, that are zone residential to put an internal ADU on. So the city adopted ordinance 21-14, so 92121, and we have a buffer area. I'll show you the map in just a sec, but part of the reason why we're here is that this group, in their wisdom, told Teresa, put it on the calendar to come back in 18 months and talk about it. See what the status is, see where we're at. Blame it on Teresa. This also satisfies, this workshop satisfies part of our moderate income housing plan goals, where we wanted to sit down and talk about, do we want to expand ADUs or are we good with it? But that was part of our look there. So in a nutshell, our regulations that we have passed, the city passed, you can only have an internal ADU. It's got to be in a residential zone, minus that USU buffer. It's got to be owner occupied. It can only be in a single family dwelling. Can't put it in a multifamily or manufactured home. Detached ADUs are prohibited. Got to comply with all applicable building, health, fire codes. Can't change the appearance of a single family. Requires one additional parking stall. Minimum lot size of 6,000 square feet. No short-term rentals. Get a landlord license and no separate utility meters.
Now, those were all, many of those decisions we did or did not have to have, correct? Like no separate utility meters was something that we chose to create.
Correct.
That was not part of the state.
Right.
It was allowed
But the
under
one
state law, but not required under state law, whereas.
But the one additional parking stall was.
But I'm saying that internal accessory dwelling units are required, but then they allowed limitations to be placed on them. And these are the limitations that we chose.
That's correct.
Okay.
So here's the map. Sorry, it's a little bit fuzzy, but this shows the kind of the cutout for USU and everything else. It's residential. That's meets the size requirement as well as got a single family dwelling on it would qualify around that for an ADU. This is kind of a blow up version of that. So basically, it's the area from 14th North to the river, 2nd East up to 16th East, and we kind of. Basically 3/4 of a mile this way, it's a little bit further that way. But these are the boundaries we all decided on is, let's keep ADUs out of this buffer area. So our modern income housing plan, goal 3 is look at ADUs, evaluate citywide expansion, include detached ADUs. The state's really pushing this hard. They think this is a way to provide, a lot of housing in a quick way. I don't know if we entirely agree with that. So from our perspective, the status of where we're at after 18 months, we permitted 5 ADUs to date. And you got a list, I think, in your packet. They're either in Ellis or in Wilson. And then we've got 1 ADU in the review process. We'll get through some enforcement issues first before they can actually qualify for the ADU. We do get a number of inquiries about ADUs in this area. That's one of the frequent phone calls Russ and Tanya get. And obviously, why? It's because it's next to the university, right? So we haven't had any formal request to change the code or amend the map or allow for detached ADUs. So nobody's formally inquired, hey, can I do this? And let me start the process. So really, let me go through some positives about ADUs. So the theory is that you provide additional housing in a tight market, affordability, you can capitalize on existing infrastructure. You can age in place for seniors. You can also provide additional income or rental housing near USU and supplemental income for homeowners. And this is what we think about when we're getting an ADU. You know, I'm just going to put in a pool house, put grandma out there, life's good. You know, a really cool tiny home or a really, you know, nicely designed accessory unit out the back. The negatives: undermines residential character, occupancy, parking have been real issues with us. It also undermines that campus residential zone where we intentionally upzone on the west side of campus. And then the question is whether or not these ADUs create enforcement or affordable housing. This is what we really see, and this is why we're a little nervous of it, is a lot of extra parking. Somebody has a shed they want to turn into an ADU because it's, you know, in the backyard, why not? And then the behavioral side of having a lot of students in your community, right? Young people aren't bad, it's just they are prone to a lot of behaviors that tend to trigger a lot of enforcement actions. So this is why we want to be cautious about how we approach ADUs. So moving forward, really we want to talk this through. There's not a decision to be made tonight, other than do we like status quo? Do we want to change? How do we want to change? Do you want to direct it back through a public process to take public comment back to the planning commission? Do you want to make some code changes, or are we good to go for another 18 months? So there you have it.
I'm surprised that there weren't more ADUs.
Just 5.
So with the 5, are there complaints?
No.
Okay.
So on that same front, we did the short-term rental as well. How many short-term rental applications have we had? Not that they're the same thing, but just kind of as a point of comparison.
There's probably, I think, a dozen
Really, only a dozen?
that have been permitted, yeah. It could be give or take a couple, but I don't think it's that many.
Give or take 100.
It felt like for weeks we were doing.
Yeah, we had a bunch at first,
Yeah.
but we've had just one in the last planning commission meeting, but we haven't had any since.
We've got one in our neighborhood and nobody even knew it.
Yeah, so we're a little hamstrung because legally we can't go look at VRBO or Airbnb and say, oh, look at all these in Logan and let's go talk to these folks. It's really complaint driven. And on Airbnb or whatever, you can't necessarily drive by and really know that it's being rented.
But there was a lot of stuff talk about short-term rentals.
It didn't pass.
It didn't
No.
pass? Wow.
Yeah.
They worked on that for a year.
So the one ADU that we have that's pending, they had a short-term rental in their house, and that's why it's still pending. Is we've told them that you need to resolve that issue first before you can actually apply for an ADU. You can't have both.
So they weren't going to live there, and they were going to short-term rental part and
Well,
ADU the rest?
No, it's I think 2 sisters on the house, so it's a sister and a boyfriend that live there, and then a brother that lives in the unit they were going to use as a short-term rental that they illegally converted. And they have an apartment upstairs that they want to convert into the ADU. Yeah.
Wow. Can you put the map back up with so where is can you identify for me the campus residential zone?
It's this area right here, or this area right here, I'm sorry.
In the gray?
Yes, from 6th East to 8th East, 4th North up to, what is that, 10th?
10th.
A little past 11th.
So how many potential ADUs could be in that campus residential zone, which is already geared towards renting. I'm just saying, like,
Because it's multifamily, most of it, I don't
so,
think.
but they, no, think that they could do a.
Currently none.
None.
Did you say
But
ADUs or short-term
I'm
rental?
saying, as we think about it,
ADUs.
what if we did allowed internal ADUs in the campus residential area? Because it's already predominantly a rental.
You're saying if it were for the single-family homes that are still left?
That are still left.
Yeah.
Nobody, they're not owner occupied.
Yeah, there's very few owner-occupied homes left in that
In that stretch.
two block stretch.
The thing that I'm not opposed to leaving it the way it is, because I feel like we've created, I mean, I know that that area from 200 East to 600 East is heavily rentals. And I hate to diminish the quality any further. If, you know, I mean, I just feel like we're adding insult to injury, because there's just so many rentals in that strip that we carved out.
But if the requirement is that it's owner occupied, just put in that.
Well, I guess what I worry about is that it'll be owner occupied for a little while and then it won't. And then it'll be over occupied in two locations, you know, I mean, there'll be over occupancy here and over occupancy here and cars everywhere, just like the picture. So that's my problem.
Aaron reported that Adams had the highest over occupancy, and
Yep.
could we get maybe well, personally, I'd like to see more information as to what are the hotspots for those
Where the complaints come from on over-occupancy?
for Adams, yes.
Yeah, we can do that, and we'll do it citywide. Yeah, I mean, obviously, the hotspot's there because it's proximity to university, and you've got, you know, the highest concentration of older homes that get converted, you know, or used for rentals. Yeah, we'll give you that information.
So we've had requests from Adams neighborhood. Is it a hue and a cry or just several requests? I mean,
You mean a request for what?
for ADUs.
Oh, I
think it's more the Hillcrest area.
No, but he said there was 5 requests.
We get requests within this boundary. I couldn't tell you if they were up here at Hillcrest or in Adams, where they're coming from. Generally, it's folks that want to do that as they look at it as a way to provide additional housing to gain additional income.
They're just looking.
I don't think they understand or realize that they also have to live there. So it's, you know, trying to make a buck, and they're
meet the code.
Yeah.
But something just quizzical. If a home has an attached garage, 2-car garage, could that garage be turned into a ADU?
If it's attached, structurally attached, they could. They'd have to go through the permitting process to get there.
Yeah.
And they would have to have additional space to replace the parking
So
stall
parking
places
would be an issue.
that are removed.
Right.
Yeah.
Because as you said earlier, the driveway can't be considered those.
Right. So they have to have 2 that they replace in the garage, plus 1 more for the ADU.
Are there cities similar to Logan size, I don't know, Provo maybe, that are permitting detached ADUs?
It's all across the board. So before we did the ADUs, a year and a half ago, we kind of looked at some college towns, university towns, and, you know, comparable sizes, and you get just a variety of approaches. But I think universally across the country, with the housing issue, they're looking at it as a way to provide affordable housing quickly. So a lot of them do allow it, but there are issues with it. I know Salt Lake City just went through or is going through the same process about do we allow for detached, under what conditions, owner occupancy, parking, complaints, things like that. So yeah, you can find examples of all different types.
So related to that, what's the downside of allowing detached ADUs? Besides the picture that you showed us of the shed in the backyard.
That's my house.
The quality that we'll get, I mean,
Yeah.
I think the downside.
We do have some in our community.
What,
Detached ADUs.
Yeah, we do. You know, I think that the biggest issue that comes with any kind of detached ADU or any kind of ADU is the impacts of behaviors. So, you know, we get complaints about occupancy, but the ones that are smart don't put the sofa in the front yard, don't park 25 cars, don't hang out all night partying. We probably wouldn't know that they've got too many kids in there. And the same thing goes with having a small detached building in the back. It's probably not a big issue as long as you can park it. And maybe you talk about occupancy loads back there. Is it size for 3 or should we just 2 or 1? And try to constrain it that way. I don't know if it would be any bigger impact than with the internal ADUs or not.
And what would be recommended offsets for that, or the size, or do we have any examples of what that might look like if we did allow detached outside of, whether in or outside of that carve-out zone?
Yeah, I don't have any recommendations size, what would be appropriate or not. You know, I think, yeah, no, I don't have any.
Okay, and that would have to work its way through planning commission first.
Correct.
And that isn't necessarily quick and easily available housing because they have to be constructed
And permitted.
and permitted. I mean, I'm just saying it's not.
Right. It's not something you can turn over tomorrow, but there are some properties that have, you know, detached garage in the back that might be easily convertible. But yeah, to build new, it's going to take you probably a year to permit it, construct it, occupy it.
Well, I know there's a concept, they call them granny pods, where they create those in the backyard so that aging parents can live not underneath the same roof.
That's right. It's right there. That's what we all want.
Yeah, I know those are happening in other parts of the country. They're called granny pods.
Yeah.
They're pre-manufactured, and they come and they put them in, and they're kind of smart homes, and you know, so.
If they look like this,
I'm just saying, so speaking with my hat from working with older adults and aging in place, there's a lot of appeal to a lot of families to be able to do something like that with an aging parent where they don't necessarily want them under a roof, and but
Especially with larger property.
but I appreciate, like 2 slides later, how that can you know, be a reality, but it's not necessarily.
yeah.
And I don't know how we structure it so we don't get more of that than the previous slide. You know, I can't figure that part out. I can't figure out how we can
preserve the character of the neighborhood.
Right.
And yet allow people to have that.
To do something like that.
to have that flexibility. And, you know, to Josh's point, I read an article the other day that indeed corporations are coming and buying up all the smaller single-family houses and turning them into rentals, which is why there isn't any starter home availability. So, but it's also hard because you're in a community where you've seen that picture with all the cars.
Across from the Whittier.
Yep.
The one with the dancing on the roof.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Yeah, that's the back.
No, it's definitely across the street from the
I've been to
Whittier.
that
Yep.
house.
And, you know, I mean, it was once upon a time a single-family house, and it's been carved into 6 different apartments, and, you know, there was no parking regulation, and there was no, you know, probably even inspection. And so I worry that we're just creating liability for humans, because they're ends up being substandard.
So do we know what USU's planned enrollment expansion is, and do they have a corresponding plan for additional housing?
Yeah, sort of. They've got.
I'm just saying, because I mean, obviously
That is-
this whole idea of additional rental housing for students on the campus, I love Utah State, but is it Logan City's responsibility to house students that generate revenue for Utah State? I'm just being kind of blunt with that statement.
I think in
but-
their master plan, you know, what their enrollment projections are over the next decade is probably up to 27,000 kids. I'm trying to remember what the number was, but they only project to house, it's around 30% on campus. They want to create that university experience for about a third of their kids or a third of the students. And the rest of it they rely on either commuters or obviously the community to do it. There's a way that they can and can't fund residential housing. We talked a little about this before. It's not as simple as, you know, obtaining funding to build a educational building. So their preference obviously is to put their resources towards building buildings that they'll use to teach kids as opposed to.
And I will tell you that all three of the buildings on Fourth North are going down. The housing.
Older,
Yeah,
older ones.
they're all
next to
coming
business
down.
School,
Yeah,
and they're not being replaced.
no, because the business school is expanding.
Gonna take them all.
And so I don't know that they have a plan to expand that. So their plan might be I know they floated the idea of buying the one across from their
That's
rec
not
center.
done.
I don't know if they did it or they
It's
didn't do
finished.
it.
It is finished, they have occupancy,
Yep.
people are living in it?
They will be. They've got the ability to occupy it. They've actually talked about purchasing that.
Yeah.
The university's talked about
Yeah.
purchasing it.
And that's apartments as opposed to, so that would be geared towards the four friends who want to live together versus the single house or single room where you have to go eat in the cafeteria.
Yeah. The traditional dorm space they were moving away from as a type of housing. You know, most kids prefer to have their own living space. The downside is when they buy these universities projects that are in the city, then
Yeah,
obviously
we lose the tax base.
takes it off the tax base, right? Tax rolls.
I'm convinced that if we create less expensive student housing and the students are living there instead of buying a home, because right now interest rates are so high, it's not a great value for somebody to come in and buy a home right now.
They bought them all when it was 2%.
I know, I'm familiar with that situation because we just bought a home and it's a lot more expensive than I can get rent for it. You know, for the people that we've got there right now. It's like now is our opportunity to create less expensive student housing, which will free up single family homes for, single families to be able to take them over. And I think now's our chance where the interest rates are really high, but we've got to create that first level of housing, which is for students, and then that should free up some of those single family homes for like first time home buyers. If we don't do that, we can't create more housing opportunities without that.
But what's happening though is that across the country, corporations and LLCs are buying up all those entry-level houses and turning them into rentals. And so then you may have freed it up, but you didn't guarantee it was going to be a
Right
family.
now is not the time to do it because I can't get enough rent to pay the payment right now with the amount of people I can get into the house that we just purchased.
Which is why we have a lot of over-occupancy.
Yeah. And so, trying to fix that, now's the time to create less expensive housing for students that should eventually open up more houses, but maybe not. Depends on who's got more
Piece
money.
on 60 Minutes on that what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, you're not buying up all the housing. It's probably less than 5% or 3%. But you can go back and get on the CBS app and go back and
Yeah.
find it within the last 6
I
months.
just read an article in the New York Times, but, so I don't know what the percentages are, but the perception is that it's removing that ability for first-time home buyers to get into the housing market and create the equity that allows them to move up further.
It's one of the issues that, but I don't think it's a single issue that really you can point to.
Yeah, I know.
There's a lot of different things going on. It's the market. We live in a market economy. It's supply and demand. There's a huge amount of demand and the supply is not there.
Well, theoretically, we've created the internal ADU, and that should be, in the grand scheme of things, that would be the least expensive option for a homeowner to create a space where they can have extra value coming in, because they don't have to create any structure. They don't have to get, they have to get permits and they have to follow fire code and things like that, but they don't have to get a building permit, and they don't have to, get drawings and go through planning commission and all that kind of, they don't have all those extra steps.
The way we fix this and get prices down is you flood the market with low cost housing, so you have inventory. You don't have inventory right now, so you can charge whatever you want. So you build a whole bunch of student housing to take care of that lower level, it will open up more houses.
Where are we going to build student housing?
I'd love to discuss that. That's a great idea.
I mean, that's the campus
I have a
residential.
great idea.
Yeah, that's the zone right there that we created to do that exact thing. We upzoned it so that you put 40 units to the acre in there. The idea was to build the student housing, here the university pulling out of these houses. But what you saw when those were built was they obviously capitalized on demand, and so the rents are pretty high.
Are really high, yeah. So it's like, the point that Josh made is, you look at like housing in all these university towns, and they're all at 35%. It's like owner occupied, and the rest are all rentals. It's because we've got all these students. Well, we create a lot of student housing that is less expensive options for them. So mom and dad don't go, well, let's just buy a house because it'll be cheaper to buy a house and you can rent it to 5 of your friends, and we'll make some money on it. We'll sell it when we're all done with it. Well, if you get the cost of student housing down lower than that, then it doesn't make sense for them to go buy a house, and then all of a sudden houses are now available. It's like we got to start at the bottom to get housing opened up at a decent price for our residents.
I guess I don't see how we do that.
As a city council, we can maybe
Mark,
help
are you
incentivize
saying
some of
the
that.
city ought to buy?
No. I'm just saying in general, we've got to find a way to encourage development that's going to create student housing.
That's through zoning unless we go into an incentive program.
Because really, there's no way to fix the housing problem unless there's too much housing.
Well, right, it's a market situation.
So where do you start? Do you build a whole bunch of single-family homes, or do you start with the student housing, which is a huge issue for us? So we create student housing, so there's an overabundance of student housing, and it trickles up instead of trickles down.
You can create an incentive by creating higher density.
Yeah.
So that the land value comes
I think there's
down.
some spots in town where we could like rezone and encourage some
What's the
development to get that
occupancy
in.
of these high-density housing, the factory and others? Are those full?
8 students, is it?
No, I'm saying,
What they're
Yeah.
occupied, how are they booked?
6 or 8?
Well, I think when that apartment building was not available this fall, you saw that all those places were full because kids were sleeping in lounges and
yeah,
double bunking because they couldn't, all those
well,
places were full.
they gave the wrong information.
I'm not saying as a city, Logan should go buy that, but I'm saying we've got to look at that option, because if we can create housing for our students, how many students have we got right now? 22,000?
So where are you thinking we could do that outside of the?
I can't say that in a public meeting.
But I mean,
But I think there's places we could do it for sure.
But we'd have to rezone.
Yeah,
So you can talk about where you think you would rezone.
yeah,
I mean, that's,
absolutely. But not tonight.
I'd like to make another comment, is that we've seen kind of the change of our neighborhoods around the urban center. But I think with the changes that have taken place, the new library, the concert hall, which is prosperous, the new housing, which is going up downtown, that the city is becoming far more vital than it was 8 years ago.
Yeah.
I think younger generations have seen that that's a better place to be than out where they have to take care of a quarter or a half acre. And there's a lot of people saying, I'd like to have something close where I can walk to the restaurant or bar, whatever it is. And I'm thinking, I'm just guessing on this, but when I was campaigning going up and down the street, I saw a lot of people buying these homes and fixing them up for themselves because they want to be able to be close in. And I'm wondering if we have any data on that, seeing that type of thing. In other words, more families moving to the center of our community rather than out in the sprawl.
I don't think we have any hard data on it. I think just anecdotal, that you still see demand for the half-acre lot in Italy or North Logan or Smithfield, because you can see every morning or night when you're trying to go to.
But people can't afford those even. I mean, that's why the apartments are going crazy. And yet we have a stock of older homes, which literally is our affordable housing. Homes that are built in the 30s, 40s.
Yeah, but it gets back to that, just to the market side of it, those older homes, you know, just a few years ago, they were relatively reasonably priced, and people were picking them up for rental income,
Yeah.
you know, investments, but now they're just not reasonably priced. Look at, you know, any listing now, you'll see, you know, what house is available for 100 grand or 200 grand or 300
You
grand.
can't get anything for 300.
Yeah, there's no supply, and what is available, people are really asking a high price for that you just shake your head at. So,
Average home sale price in February, cash value was $464,
Yeah.
which is down slightly from last year, but still $464,000 is the average. I mean, that's across the valley, but
and their market time is probably lengthened out,
I
but
think
there's
it's 52, 53 days now, where it used to be 20.
still a demand for it, so. Yeah, I don't think there's an easy answer to any of it. I mean, there's a lot of competing issues. You know, we can upzone areas, but then you have a lot of impacts to the existing residential areas. You know, we went through the Hillcrest plan, and we looked at on the east side of the campus, you know, you're doing a little mixed use over there, and people were opposed to it. And Hillcrest has got one of our higher concentrations of owner occupancy relative to rental occupancy. So it's a tough one. It really is.
Well, I guess, given the fact that we've only had 5 ADUs,
5.
and 1 pending,
Correct.
in 18 months, I would like to wait and leave it as it is, but I would like to have some sort of, if we could keep track of how many requests we have in the restricted area, so we could better evaluate whether we should expand it, because right now it's a little anecdotal. And I feel like, especially Adams for sure, and that area up to 1600 East, I talked to a guy the other day that is very upset that people are parking on the street that are going to school, obviously, but they're utilizing homeowner
You're
permits.
welcome.
Yeah.
I'm further to
I was like, yeah, Amy told him I'd talk to him. But no, he had a point. He said, they're misusing the tools that we tried to create to help preserve neighborhood the residential character of an area. And I think that we haven't allowed enough time. The 18 months is, like I said, we've got 5. There hasn't been a lot of demand for them, and I would like to wait and see how many, just for the next year, I'd like to see how many more we get that are internal, given our current, what we have, and I would like some numbers on how many requests we have in the restricted area. We can better judge.
I also would be curious just to see what some of the guidelines could be for detached, though.
Yeah.
Like how could a detached ADU be created and crafted to address those concerns we have about how do you still figure the character.
Go back to the cute ADUs, what we'd like to see. Not those, no, the next ones, yeah. So I have an 1.5 acre piece of property with a house on it, and trying to subdivide into 2 right now because we can do that. We don't have enough to do a full subdivision. But I'd love to do a house with an ADU like that and make that happen. But I can't because it's in the restricted zone. So
Yeah.
and that makes sense because I want that pool and that house right there. So my kids can come and stay because they live out of town, and they can come and stay for a week or 10 days and stay in my extra house. And if they don't want to mess with grandma and grandpa, then they can go stay over there. But we can't.
These images
we can't do that.
Those are not affordable housing.
No.
I'm not looking for affordable housing.
But this is.
But that saves me from going and buying a house that somebody else can live in to make it affordable for my kids to come and stay.
Or short-term rental.
Yeah, exactly. You know,
It'd be
it's like-
cheaper than
it's-
a hotel.
Yeah, it would. But-
But I think that's why looking at detached guidelines would be helpful, because if the cost of building one is going to be more than one could reasonably recoup in rent too, then obviously that, like, you could put restrictions on it to make
Starts
it
to work,
like
yeah.
non-financially viable. for
So do you think that
to work.
over the next 18 months, we should investigate that and we should just let it sit the way it is for now and then
With the
work,
internal, and
work
then
toward,
work the concept of the detached.
There's no pressure to change things.
The legislature also had a lot of conversations about changing ADA,
Yeah.
you know,
ADUs.
ADU regulations. So by the end of next session, it could be different.
It could be
They
different.
didn't end up
Yeah.
doing anything.
But that would be, I don't think we have any concrete, like burning desire to make a change today. But I would
I
like
do.
to have some more, well, I know that's a personal desire. But
Affects me.
that would be my thought anyway.
I'd be open to discuss it again in a year after the legislature session is over. They've had their discussions and we revisit it in March of next year.
Makes sense, to see what,
2027, we get to that?
Yeah.
what
You were- what year are you
2027, is that what you said?
What year are you retiring?
Isn't that 2024?
Soon enough.
I think that's good advice, Ernesto, to see what state legislation might.
So we
come out.
should maybe go for March or April of next year?
Let's do March next year.
Who's going to be chair?
Check my calendar.
And I'll come as a visitor.
Okay.
If Amy's chair, she will have masks and PPUs.
Yeah.
Woo-hoo!
Yeah.
Tear down
Yeah.
on development plans.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, Mike, if that, we can start to look at what detached guidelines might be like. I think that could take a year to,
Well, he's got a lot on his plate.
It's gonna take a year for me to get my subdivision.
Any other considerations?
Thank you.
Just a reminder, as Gail reminded us, tomorrow is the Wilson Neighborhood Meeting at Wilson Elementary.
They're starting the Wilson Neighborhood Plan.
Yes.
and I would like to say thanks to, Mayor and Police Chief and Tom King towards the Learning Center. Thanks for coming and taking a look at that. It's been
Well, I'll just say, I was impressed.
And Rusakina came too.
Oh, great.
And we give them passes to the rec center. I learned that.
Yeah.
So they go shopping.
Yeah, we purchased those, yeah. But thanks, Chief, for coming and doing it.
We purchased them, or we
Bang
did.
that guy.
Thank you, everyone. This meeting is adjourned.